Hello and welcome to DigFin VOX, Voices in Digital Finance. I'm your host, Jame DiBiasio. If you like the program, give us a like, share, subscribe. You know what to do. My guest today is Gourab Mukherjee, co-founder of Aktivo, a Singapore-based insurtech, helping its users try to improve their lifestyles and their health. We spoke about the demographic impact of increased longevity, but decreasing health, what that means for the insurance industry and for society, and how technology might be able to help. Gourab Mukherjee from Aktivo Labs, welcome to DigFin VOX.
Thanks, James. Happy to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. I wanted to get you in. I saw you give a presentation a little while ago. Thought it was really interesting, something that will be worth sharing with the DigFin audience. Aktivo Labs provides, I guess, sort of bio-tracking mobile device, telematics. I don't know if that's still the word that's used these days. And you want to sell that to the insurance industry. So I wanted to start, before we get into the nitty-gritty there, why should people care? The big picture here, what's happening, particularly in Asia, that makes what's happening with insurtech and health tech such an interesting space to be.
Right. I think it's just not only about why should people care in Asia, why should people care globally itself, right? The problem statement that we at Aktivo Labs, we're trying to address, the macro problem statement, is of longevity. It doesn't sound like a problem statement when you talk about it. We are living longer. That's a great thing. But the challenge is that we are living longer, but the extra years we live longer with the disease. And that has all to do with the fact that over the last 100 years, all the research and development dollars have really gone in terms of improving the quantity of life rather than the quality of life. And as a result, we live longer with the disease, and that impacts the entire ecosystem. It's not just the quality of lives of the patients and that of their families that are impacted, but everyone gets impacted, right? Their employers are impacted. The payers, we're talking about the insurance companies and the reinsurance companies, are impacted. The providers are overburdened by this plague of chronic diseases in our society. And ultimately, we believe that the governments of the world would have to step in to maintain the health of their population such that they can maintain a functioning society. So the way to do it is to increase the health span of populations. That is a fairly new concept. A health span is, lifespan, the longer you live. If you live till 80, your lifespan is 80. But if you live till 50 without a chronic disease, then your health span is 50. So we're all about increasing that health span, making that dent over there and bring some from this side onto this side and, maintaining that. And that's the only way we can have sustainable aging. Yeah.
How does that conversation work in different social economic segments? When I look at a lot of younger people, they exercise more, they're not drinking, laudable activity, but these tend to be people that are wealthy, educated, urban. Do these habits extend beyond that? And particularly in emerging markets, that's going to be a narrow part of the population. How deeply are these positive habits extending themselves?
Yeah, unfortunately, you're very, very true and spot on identifying the demographics who are doing the right things or having that conversation. When I said it's cool to be healthy, I think that's a very vogue conversation, but ultimately it doesn't trickle down to the bottom of the pyramid itself. So we are looking at data sets across countries like India, Philippines, the working class population. We're working with insurers, we're working with telehealth companies, super app companies, and we have folks who are working in call centers, who are working in, although you're white-collared or jobs, but still they're in the middle class or the upper-going middle class. The data that's coming across is fairly scary in terms of the sedentary lifestyles that they lead, the erratic behavior they have on their sleep or the lack of it for that matter. And the way our models are creating the propensity models that we are creating around the probability of the at-risk population for various chronic conditions are fairly high, and that actually manifesting. You're seeing folks getting diabetes or even cardiac diseases at fairly early ages. And those kind of conversations, those kind of news is fairly common ground nowadays. But yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
Have you found the COVID pandemic had any impact on this conversation or people's way they think about this issue?
It's health. The conversation around health in general, of course, has become front, right, and center. Certain conversations obviously have taken off itself, especially around mental health. That's now, people do realize that's such an important aspect, because you see, other manifestations of diseases are fairly visual. Mental health and trauma, it's not fairly visual, but given what people had gone through those COVID years, that conversation has become front, right, and center. There's also conversations around staying healthy to having better immunity. Those conversations also have come front, right, and center as well. So yes, I think overall, and health in general is a conversation that's fairly in vogue, and rightly so.
So let's get then into ways that, at least at Aktivo, that you're trying to contribute your bit to this and, turn it also into a commercial business. So you have mobile apps you create to help people try to change their habits. There's been a number of these. A lot of the insurance companies sign on to different services like this. Do they work though? Are we getting hard evidence that these are actually changing behavior at scale?
Still early days. I think our hypothesis was that if you look at a population, you first have to communicate what it means, right? There's the proliferation of wearables and IoT-enabled devices, your smartwatches, your fitness trackers. The end user is bombarded with data, right? From your resting heart rate, your heart rate variability, your deep sleep, your REM sleep, calories burned. What does that mean? At the end of the day, to that average Joe, to Jane Doe or man on the street, you have to explain what's that meaning of that data. We figured out very early on in our research when we started off that the best way to talk to a population about their risk, which is multifactorial in nature, is to do this through a composite scoring mechanism. One number, it tells James, the score is high or low, and if it is low, why it is low, right? So the financial services industry, they do it quite well with their credit scoring, their FICO scores. They tell that your score is low because your mortgages are too high or you're not paying your bills on time, and if you do ABC rectifications, you get XYZ benefits in return. And that's the way you talk to a population about risk, which is because of multiple factors, right? Through a composite scoring mechanism. So that was the first piece which we wanted to do, that how do you communicate what it means, right? Instead of giving you all these different data points, the question is, so what? Now what? So what, right? Not everyone is a doctor or a sports scientist. So that's the first approach we took. And then how can you go about improving it, and what are the incentives around it, right? So for you can do, because you don't wake up in the morning every day and you say that, I'm going to think about how I'm going to live the healthiest 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years. The human mind doesn't work that way. We do not, we're not incentivized to think long-term, right? So we're still that, in the Stone Age, you're not thinking about 10 years, 15 years.
Let's go hunt the elephant. Yeah.
Let's go and hunt this elephant. You see anything that can deliver calories immediately to you, I'm going to just chomp it up because it might not be there 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. I might go without food. So our minds have not evolved to think long-term that way. But health is always choosing long-term over short-term, and that's long-term health, right? So from there, from a score, you explain to them what it means, and from there, you drive those various incentives. That's where our endeavor is to work with the financial services industry, because at the end of the day, health is also, or access to health or good health is also an economics challenge. So that's how we're trying to bring this all together. To your question, is it working? So far, so good, but we don't have like longitudinal data to show that at great population levels. But we have some very good partners who are committed to the cause of going all the way with us and see the data. So far, so good. I would be able to share more when you speak next.
What is the degree of personalization that you can bring to this? obviously that's a hot topic in many parts of financial services and I guess any kind of digital business right now. And let me go back to an anecdote to sort of broaden my or like refine my question. I recently had my annual checkup with my general practitioner, and he presented me with a bunch of scores and a bunch of numbers, and he explained what they meant. But I said, well, is that good or bad? And because I don't know, I'm not a doctor. And he said, for you, it's good because this is the range in which you are, and other people may not have that range, but it doesn't mean, I mean, nothing out of the big ranges, but within your your biology and your history, this is kind of where you're at. So fine. So the reason I'm relating this is you're creating this score for your person, but is that score reflecting the score of the average, and therefore may not really reflect that individual's personal situation, they're just the way they are, their genetics, or are you able now to start to drill down and create something that really targets individuals so that they can start to really make a difference in whether it's diet or exercise or sleep or what have you?
So I think to answer that question, you need to understand what level of personalization do you need, right? So here we're talking about population health. So exception will always be the rule, outliers would be there, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you just to elaborate on that, the approach that we took is we looked at what are the risk factors that lead to early morbidity, right? So there is modifiable risk factors and there's non-modifiable risk factors, right? So the non-modifiable risk factors, 40% of that, or 40% of all your risk factors is your genetic endowment. You can't change that unless and until something like CRISPR becomes mainstream technology and affordable, right? So 40% you can't do much on that. 30% is socio-economic factors. The air you breathe in Mumbai versus the air you breathe in Vancouver versus the air you breathe in Jakarta has an impact on your early morbidity itself. And most people can't really wake up one morning and say that, you know what, I'm not going to stop living in Jakarta. I'm going to live in Vancouver for the rest of my life. So 70% you really can't change. But 30% is modifiable risk factors, right? So
Okay.
number one and number two is smoking and substance abuse. Alcohol falls into that piece itself, something I was not very happy to hear the first time I heard.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Okay.
Yeah, I was just like, is that true? Is that true? And my co-founder, Professor Lai, said, yeah, absolutely, Gourab, I know where you're getting at. Exercise, the best thing you can do to your body after you quit smoking. Then there's nutrition. The challenge with nutrition is that we know what is bad food. In terms of what is good food that leads to long life, the science is still a bit noisy. There is some growing consensus among experts that Mediterranean diets or adequate consumption of fiber in your diet leads to improved health outcomes. Then you have sleep, which my co-founder used to call it like the weapon of mass destruction, because 100 years back, 100 years back, the whole population used to go to sleep probably when the sun went down and woke up when the sun went up, right? Urbanization has changed all that.
And electrification.
Yes, absolutely. Sedentary time is like, you've probably heard that, the quote somewhere that sitting is the smoking of our generation, right? Our bodies were not meant to sit down for such prolonged durations, because work 100 years or 150 years meant that, you're on your feet, you're up and about, you're doing something to go and make a living. And then there's again another growing consensus among experts that there are correlations between mental well-being and early morbidity and mortality. So when we look at Aktivo, that the score as a whole, it takes into this modifiable risk factors, right? And we created a composite score. It is contextualized to age and your sex at birth. And then once we understand what are the factors that are bringing your score down, we can impact that. Is that right now being used for diagnosis or prognosis of disease? No, it's just for populations to understand what their risk factors are, how they can move about to going into good risk. There's still the 70% that we don't go into the genes and the epigenetics and see, what are your epigenetic triggers. Don't do all that. You can go down that road. It just comes down that what is sustainable and scalable in a population, man. Yeah.
how are insurance companies or reinsurers using your apps?
So primarily for the payers, for life and health insurance companies, we do three things for them. So number one is engagement and improving the proximity with their policyholders. So as an industry, traditionally, it's not been known to be great engagers, let's put it that way. There's no reason for a policyholder to talk to their insurer other than, making a premium or going for a claim, right? Being processing a claim. So both of these are not positive touch points. So if you're a life and a health insurance companies, you can use platforms like Aktivo to actually improve the one thing that you're insuring, their life and their health. So that conversation becomes a positive conversation itself. The second thing is that the insurers are completely in the dark in terms of what is the moving risk on their books. I am one good example. I'll not take the name of my insurer, but when I came to Singapore, and I started my relationship with my health insurance company in 2014. It's been 9 years. All they know about me in 9 years is that I have grown older by 9 years. They do not know anything about me other than that, in terms of whether my BMI has moved, whether I've seen the inside of a gym, right? Where am I, right? It's just 9 years, nine years of premiums. Touch wood, I've not made a single claim in 9 years, but that's all they know. So a lot of these companies who are engaging me in the digital realm, they know more about my risk that my insurer does, and that's where we come in itself. So from the Aktivo score perspective, it's just engagement, creating differentiator in terms of the market, in terms of how you go about your customer experience. And the number three, which is the most important part, understand the moving risk on your books. Once you understand that, can you come up with novel financial journeys that not only you're using this platform as risk evaluation, but risk management as well, and then be able to deliver value to the lives of your customers. So that's the life and the health insurance, the insurer level. The reinsurers are interested to know more about this kind of real-time data to claims experience for a longer duration of time. So of course, they want to come up with product differentiations as well. They want to own a larger pie of the treaties that they have with the direct carriers, and how they can further upsell and cross-sell various other products to the existing customers itself. So how do you hold on to also the healthiest book in the market and retain it? That's also something that they look forward to. But ultimately, these are the folks who are creating incentives to that end user's life, who's not thinking about health every day, but because they lived, took some healthier options, right? They earned some financial benefits or some other rewards around their life itself. So they're looking forward to that. Yeah.
Now you run a business. You're here to make money, and that's fine. That's your job. But is there beyond the need for you to have a commercial life? Is there a concern that we are just going to exacerbate that have versus have not experience? Because obviously the insurers will want to incentivize the people that are most healthy. They want those healthy books. They don't want to get a lot of people who are smokers, chronic illness, etc. To what extent is this app going to just sort of create an easier pathway for the insurance industry to find those desirable customers and cut out or penalize the ones that don't fit the bill or simply aren't using these kinds of things?
Right. Just glad you mentioned that. So this is a platform not only just to drive self-selection. That would potentially, if you bring it even just something as simple as just capturing steps, it could just because your steps are high, it might just have self-selection right there. Think about it this way, right? I'm a 40-year-old man. I'm already HbA1c levels is around 8.0 because I am genetically predisposed to having diabetes, right? And then suddenly, because of my family history, my genetic history, and the fact that I'm 8.0, no insurer is willing to write or underwrite me, right? And here, we have now a platform like this. It says that, okay, Gourab's actually very serious about maintaining his life. He understands his risk. He's maintaining an Aktivo score, and every month he's self-declaring his fasting plasma glucose. So now I'm going to give him a product. Albeit the premium might be high, but erstwhile he was not even getting a life insurance cover. He could do that and keep his family safe. So it's not only about attracting the healthiest book, but it also can open up a new market and bring them and include them into that insurance ecosystem. Erstwhile, this was, again, from a business perspective, it works because suddenly an insurance will look like, oh, okay, that's an interesting segment. I can go in over there, and that I can start. And it works. It works especially in an over-penetrated markets like Singapore, or Hong Kong, for that matter. Like, people have insurance, and they're always like, okay, which is the other segment we could go to, right? Because every insurer here is playing a zero-sum game right now, because everyone's, my increase in share is your decrease in that as a pie. It doesn't have to be that way. So the platform we are looking at is not only just about maintaining a healthy population healthy, it's also how to also incentivize a certain population with early diseases like pre-diabetes, diabetes, hypertension to manage the situation. What kind of financial incentives you can create around that as well?
Yeah, I'm sure that most people would want to use these things to if they're going to adapt it, they want the help to get them into a better place. But there are always people who are not like that. My wife related a story to me of someone who put their Fitbit tracker on the collar of the dog. So the dog recorded lots of steps because they wanted to get the insurance premium benefit. So how do you safeguard against gaming the system?
You're right. I think my take on that is like, if you want to game the system somehow, you will be able to game it itself, right? So it's just this, I don't think it's as much as different as you saying, I don't, lying on your insurance disclaimer whether you smoke, you don't smoke, right, to get that premium discounts. But what we have also done is that we have built some fraud detection algorithms. Now, why and how that whole thing started is because our first port of landing was on the corporate health piece. And in the corporate health programs, when the corporations came, said that, okay, the top of the leaderboard, the guys with the podium finish, gets an Apple Watch, and then suddenly, people that are having 80,000, 90,000, 100,000 steps, right? And then we started creating a lot of these algorithms that can pick up, like, okay, this is manufactured data. This data looks like, it's been set on a motion, perpetual motion machines, right? Because the way we're looking at the data that's coming in, generating the system, those are machine learning algorithms that's been picked up, and then we immediately are able to filter majority of it or almost all of it. But I think somebody still wants to game it, finds the dog that knows how to run about and beats our algorithm. That's just kudos to them. They deserve to get that.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. And what's the situation with Aktivo in terms of your funding? Where are you with your financial runway, and what's your next sort of goal or milestone?
Yeah. So funding, very recently, I think last November, we raised 10 million US in Series A. It was led by Mitsui from Japan, and also saw participation from Enterprise Singapore and also from Adaptive Ventures. So right now, just fairly capitalized. It's not something that I'm fairly used to. I've always been used to, like, okay, my runway is like 3 months, 4 months, and that has been my life for the last four and a half years. So it's a different challenge now that we have the growth capital, how to identify the right opportunities and invest the resources accordingly. So it's a new role that I've found myself in. But it's exciting times. I think right now we're working with 14 large enterprise partners. Folks like AXA, folks like Tune Protect, folks like Marsh McLennan, folks like Aditya Birla Health Insurance. These are all our customers. And then we have a fairly strong pipeline. So we're just trying to now move away from being a startup to how do we can have more mature processes such that we can scale sustainably. We have a fairly good runway because we have a fairly controlled gross and almost very negligible net burn as well, since we have revenues that we are growing 30% month on month on that piece itself over the last 3-4 months. And the challenge for me is to maintain that and do that sustainably itself. We have now also a big part of the mandate from my board is to also look into markets with higher margins. So because primarily been in Asia, and some of our biggest customers are from just user-based perspectives. It's been from India, Philippines, now Thailand. We are doing fairly well, although we have a good presence in Hong Kong as well. But those are the markets where most of the numbers are coming from. We are looking at North America and Japan as part of our expansion plans for the next 18 months, and that's where we're going to spend some of our coins in those markets as well. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, Gourab, I've really enjoyed speaking with you. I'm a little distressed to hear that my preference for Burgundy may not be doing me any favors, but I think we'll have to give a little bit back. So I'm not quite ready to give that up. But
well, mental health is a big part of the score as well.
Yeah,
so
my mental health is good. So I'm gonna up that and maybe do a few more hikes, and so I can maintain my other things. But thank you for coming on and talking about what's going on in the world of health tech.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure, James. Thanks a lot.